We're the two Pilates Chicks. We're here in our studio in Los Angeles. And it is season 6, episode 6.
Yes.
Woo! That sounds like so official.
6-6.
6-6. Luckily, it's just those sixes. And today, we're going to kind of make sure we stay on our path, on target. And our brains are a little woo in birthday mode, I think.
Birthday month.
Yes, Davita's birthday is in, what's today? Is today Wednesday? Yeah, 2 days. 2 days. But we're kind of chatting a little bit about a subject we've chatted in multiple episodes, kind of touched on. We did our workshop on the outdated cueing to updated cueing. But it kind of came to us last week, I guess, because we had a new teacher training class start. And they were fascinated with the fact that we were saying you can teach Pilates without using anatomy terms. And they had never taken Pilates where they weren't being told anatomy cues.
Yeah.
Which we don't use when we teach Pilates in the teacher training and then but we'll kind of go through when we have people that are in the PT setting, that changes.
Now it's different.
But the other thing that you were saying was, why do we make Pilates so complicated?
Yeah.
With our verbiage, meaning all these anatomy cues we're hearing that really don't resonate with the client.
Yeah, when they don't make anything more useful in the exercise, they don't connect the client to their movement anymore. It's just there's a time and a place for these types of cues. So we wanted to revisit this idea of cueing specific to these anatomy cues because we hear them all the time.
Especially you see it on social media. We've read articles, cue this, cue that, but it really kind of can cause that client to grip and cause that client to actually stop moving.
Yeah, it often will counteract what you're actually trying to do with them. And so, what do we even mean by this? We're saying...
It's a huge...
It can be a complicated thing. And so the idea, we were thinking, okay, so why do we as Pilates teachers make Pilates so complicated? Why are we telling somebody to move from their transverse abdominis, to pull in from their...
To initiate from their glutes, or to make you fire from your glutes, or even setting the client up before they move. Placing their body where you think it should be before they even start to move.
Yeah, and telling them for those anatomical positions, I need your heels directly under your sit bones. I need your, whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Other things. I need your thing aligned with this thing. And it gets people very, very, very in their head and very restricted, and they aren't able to move.
And their brain is also busy now.
Yeah.
Because they've had this thought put in their brain, and now their brain is wait, I don't understand how to move when you're wanting me to do this.
So we thought it was really interesting because these new student teachers that have been in all these classes where they're wait, how do you even cue without anatomy?
Well, and one of them she's a dancer. So she's done Pilates her whole dance career.
And that was me.
And and she even was how do you, I've always been told anatomy.
Yeah.
When I'm taking my Pilates.
But if we think about it, we're moving, right? So we're working dynamic stability, we're working coordination, we're focusing on movement. We're not supposed to be trying to just place somebody in a very static position and make that position perfect.
Exactly. Or put them in that perfect position.
Yeah, because we want them to be able to find their position. So we, as the teacher, we shouldn't be placing them specifically anyway.
And I like what you said about dynamic stability, because it's our whole, and you and I have both had moments in our lives outside the studio where we were oh, there's Pilates saving us from being hit by a car or whatever. But it's that dynamic stability. It's that when we're outside and we're moving and something shoves at us or trips us or whatever, that our body can react and understand. Yeah. And if we're in Pilates and you're freezing them and telling them what muscles and this and that, they're not getting that ability in their mind and body when they're out in the real world.
Yeah, and like the pillars of Pilates, right? Like coordination,
balance.
Yeah. All these things that we're trying to instill in them through the movement. If I'm saying, okay, in footwork on the reformer, place your feet here, and I'm going to put my hands and like actually
put their feet there.
When they push out, is that a happy place for them? Mm-hmm. I don't know. We need to see where they naturally move themselves and then add in the layers of cueing as we see what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it needs to be very responsive, not like I'm supposed to cue this exercise in this way because I was told to cue this exercise in this way. And so I'm just going to tell this client this, but it might not connect to what they need at all.
Because I think you and I were talking about on our hike the other day, that whole cue of footwork with heels together, toes apart, and it being a fist.
Yeah, very specific.
Very specific. And I know, like, just the other day, one of the students was training a client who's knock-kneed. And in a position, it was like, well, I can't do that because, you know, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, okay, then move here.
Yeah.
Change this. Oh, yeah, that's better.
Right. So that worked for that person.
Exactly.
Yeah, and for me, like if somebody puts their fist there and says, "Your Pilates,"
you feel like you're a pigeon toed.
I feel like turned in. So you really have to find what works for yourself. It can't be a very specified position put on you.
Yeah, and it also it's like you said, it's different on everybody,
and it can change day to day too. And I have had clients like that are either super bow-legged or very knock-kneed, and where you try to place them into footwork, and you have to see where they move and where their body's gonna go. Like they can't necessarily be where you put them.
Yeah, and I think for me also that whole placing and putting the client in that position, you're taking away your ability as a teacher to learn their movement and to learn what maybe kind of range or whatever you can kind of help with, because you're restricting them right away.
Yeah.
And you're not seeing what their choices are, how they move.
Right. Because you need to see, like, okay, so again, if we're in footwork, okay, place your toes on the bar.
Yeah.
And push out.
Yeah.
And, like, see
and
where they go.
even if they, like, go up to their arches and you're like, that's not their toes. And then you're like, that's interesting. And they're like, oh, really? Yeah, it's like you're like learning that maybe their proprioception isn't the best, you know? So it's like, okay, we need to work on proprioception here a little bit.
Yeah. And somebody like that, like if you tell them to press from their glutes, like they're not going to know what to do. So if you just give them that cue, like just push the bar away.
Push it away.
And then, okay, their glutes are naturally going to be activating as they press.
Yeah. They have to, or they wouldn't go out.
And that's part of the why are we making Pilates so complicated? So why are we cueing people from all of these anatomical places throughout the body if people don't know?
Yeah, they don't. And I think this goes into, because you and I had this discussion, it's like, it seems like such a serious thing, this cueing from anatomy, and this is how it's done. And you look on social media and that the clients look so serious and everything's like, and I'm like, they just don't look like they're having fun at all.
No.
And it's like, and it's really, I feel more of a exploration and figuring things out. And then, like we've talked about in a lot of the episodes, is you can cue the glutes, and one client will feel it, and the other won't feel her glutes, but so they'll think they're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Or why can't I feel? But it might just be, they are working, like you said, they have to work.
They have to work.
But it might not be the thing that's needing the work the most, or the thing that's maybe driving it, or whatever it is. You don't know yet.
Yeah, and I mean, and that makes me think of like the bridges example, where it's so different for everybody. So shoulder bridge, if you place the client's foot where you think they should be for shoulder bridge, it's probably not the right place for them. It's just, it's always something slightly different.
I let them figure it out.
Yeah.
And then I'll say, you know, if you can bring your feet in closer, great. And you say if, then, but let
if
them.
If you can.
Yeah, if you can. But if their feet are out wide, they obviously chose that position, and you can kind of guide them, but.
Yeah, you can guide, oh, you know, it looks like to me it might work a little in, so.
Yeah.
can you step your feet in a little bit?
Or maybe imagine a ball and you're coming in.
Yeah. But if you tell them, so they're in the shoulder bridge position, and you say, okay, so...
Your feet have to be right here.
Right here. When I've been told that it hurts my knees or my low back, it's too grippy and too, like, restricted.
Yeah, see? It restricted your movement.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of range, a lot of movement. Yeah. So if it's restricting...
If it's restricting you, imagine what someone who's not. Yeah.
It's going.
Oh. What were you saying? I knew that's what happened. Yeah, but the shoulder bridge, because like you said, there's different, like, it is the same exercise. You're lifting your hips up. It's the same exercise. But there's so many ways to cue that from when people are in PT and rehab and then in that Pilates studio environment.
Yeah.
Which both of us have
done
figured
both.
out. Yeah.
So when I am working with somebody in a more of a rehab setting, if they're coming for that reason, we're thinking a little bit more anatomically.
Yeah.
So we are talking about the region of their body that maybe they just had their post-op. So
like
they had
hip or knee or
hip
something
replacement,
like
knee, whatever injury. And so we're rehabbing from that. So we are talking about that region. I'm talking about the anatomy that supports that region and our goals within that. Right. So if we're using the shoulder bridge to make the hips a little stronger, support the hips, support the knee, we are talking about that, and that's okay. So we can use anatomical cues in that instance.
Right. And like we talked about, the client usually is in rehab in PT and understands what you're asking them to do.
Yeah. So they've been getting educated on that region of the body. So it makes sense to them, more so than if you're teaching a group class and telling someone to just
use your glutes,
bridge from the glutes. So if
probably cause a hamstring cramp.
Right, and it does. And we see that all the time. If the client, so clients that know bridges, they're like, okay, I want to work my glutes. I want strong glutes.
Squeeze my glutes.
They squeeze the glutes and they bridge up from the glutes, and they get a hamstring cramp.
Yep, every time.
So if I tell them, I say, let's come down, let everything relax, and just see if you can press into the arms into the mat, press the feet into the mat, and then lift the hips where they can go. And then maybe you cue them to like lengthen the front of the hips a little bit, try to pull the mat under them with the heels.
Yeah, drag the heels in, which is going to get a little better into the glutes.
Yeah. And so you're activating the posterior chain. You are in the glutes, you are in the hamstrings. You're also now in like the backs of the arms. You're
full body again.
Length. So your full body, you are getting the glutes, but it's not grippy. It's not restricted.
Not cramping. Exactly. And I think that's a good point too. It's like even when you're cueing in that moment for the client, we both have clients that have had a hip, knee, whatever, and I swear everyone that does PT does bridges.
Yeah,
and I did them.
It's so
many things,
knees,
so many.
Hips.
Yeah, it's like because it's full body.
It's full
so
body.
Basically, the PT is just cueing that part of the body that they want out of that shoulder bridge.
Yeah. And that's also what's cool, I think I love about rehab and Pilates, is that you can use the same exercise for different things depending on what focus you give a person. And so bringing that back to like the anatomy cues, if you're giving somebody an exercise and telling them to focus only on that one spot, again, that's going to be restricting movement. It's going to be either physically restricting where they're like, I don't know how to move from that.
Right.
Or mentally, because then they're a little kind of like, well, wait, how do I do that?
Yeah. And I think we've seen that a lot. This was another thing on social media. And there are, I wish I remembered his name. The guy we saw on social media. Was he Australian? With the bike on the reformer?
Oh, the joke.
Yeah, the joke.
So yeah. I don't remember.
So we're seeing more like people like joking about things and like showing the client being told to engage whatever. And the
these
client
crazy
going,
cues.
I don't understand what you're saying. And I think that's kind of what we were talking about when this started, is those cues that even for us as teachers, we're like, I don't know how I would do that.
Yeah, where it just doesn't make sense.
or using the same anatomy cue for all these different things, which really doesn't apply to those different aspects of movement.
Yeah, and it just brings it back to, like, instead of just repeating cues that we hear and just trying to say things all the time, we need to be thinking about why, like, the purpose of the exercise. Why are we picking it for the person, and what are we trying to actually have them do? And what is actually happening in that exercise? Because if you're telling somebody to do something rounding through the back, but then you're cueing, like, the hips pushing forward, you're inadvertently getting them into an arched back position. So it's like just knowing what you're actually asking for and the purpose of it is super important versus just having the scripted cues to just keep saying.
Yeah, because it's like every exercise, there's movement concepts in it, like, the 100 and rolling back and what rocker. I mean, and it's kind of like, well, what is the purpose of seeing this body do this, or what are they struggling with? And instead of cueing that, use your glutes more, because you're not in their body.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah, we don't know what it feels like to them. After having experience, you can see the person, and you can kind of see what might be needed, but we never know.
No.
So we need to give a suggestion, like, can you reach here? Or how does it feel if you try this?
Yes. Or like
guiding.
Or how, get that push-pull, or get that press away, or feel the mat and push, like something that gives them this, like, ability to do it themselves.
The action.
Yeah. Which we did a lot in our outdated cueing.
The workshop. Yeah. And that's, makes me think of that, like, extrinsic, intrinsic cueing. And so,
I'm glad you remembered that, because that wasn't in our notes, but we talked about it.
So if you're giving somebody an intrinsic focus, you're cueing them, like, the anatomy cues. You're cueing their body, the specific point.
So they have to go
body.
inside themselves. But we were also talking about, and you mentioned, like, those clients that are kind of revved up already, that they're already, like, central nervous system or their brain or whatever, or they have a pain, and then you're asking them to, like, go into more their body.
Yeah, so if somebody has chronic pain or is super hyper-focused on their injury or their pain.
Or their body, like super focused on their body. Like
any sensation.
Yeah, exactly.
So if this person is just, like, really hyper-focused, and then you give them an anatomy cue, an intrinsic cue, they're going to be even more hyper-focused on every sensation that they're feeling, and that's going to exacerbate that, like, overly focused part of their body. And so then they're not going to be able to move very well. They're going to probably increase anxiety, increase that hypervigilance.
I think of my client, Susan, that you know, and I love her, and she won't mind me talking about this, but she is very much internal into what's going on inside, and what I would never give her a cue.
Feel.
No, because it just would make her more like, oh, I felt that. Oh, this is, And so it's like those cues for that type of person just
it doesn't work. And so for that, like, the extrinsic cue, the action cue, can you reach for the door? Can you push the foot bar across the room? Those are the things that are really going to help that person get their movement and get out of their head, where they're not so focused on every sensation.
Yeah.
And that will then inadvertently, like, help the nervous system calm down, help their anxiety calm down. Then they will be leaving their session feeling so much better and feeling like they had in control that time.
Of them, of their movement and themselves. Centered.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was so funny when we were talking about this, because I had just seen an article on anxiety. And when people are anxious, and so, like, we're talking about intrinsically in them and it just spiraling, is to do something with your hands.
Oh, yeah, you had mentioned that.
Yeah.
Those grounding techniques.
Like drawing or cooking or baking or gardening, because you are doing something, like an action with your body, and it's taking you outside of that. And that's what Pilates, I think, should do for everybody anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you want to leave a session. Like, I always feel the best when I've just, like, been in the work, get moving. You're not really thinking about specific little teeny tiny minute things. And by the time the session's done, you're like, wow.
Where did the time go?
Yeah. Same thing, like, if you like running and you just, like, go out on a jog and let the mind go and, like, you just feel better. And afterwards.
That's such a good point, because it's like if you're constantly the whole session being told to work this, make sure this is not doing this, make sure this is that, and you're so into that, like, it can feel tiring, defeating.
Yeah.
Frustrating, create more anxiety and stress, instead of, like you said, just being in it and moving and kind of feeling things for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, and we're not saying that people, like, shouldn't be cueing and helping people. It's no, you see what the person is needing as you're letting them move through, and then you're adding those layers on of cues that are applicable to that person.
Exactly. And a lot of times, you and I've talked about it, the client will kind of give you that information.
You see it.
Or they'll even say, I had Hiroko came in, lovely client, and she'd been in Japan for 2 weeks skiing, and she came in, she said, oh, I'm just so tight. All over. And I was like, let's just move and breathe. She's like, okay. It was like, so it was like, okay, we're just going to do that. So I think that makes also listening to them, which we've talked about in multiple episodes.
We've talked about, you have to listen to what they need. And so the idea being, like, if we just have these scripted cues that we're told to say, we're not connecting to the exercise. We're not connecting the exercise to the client and what they need.
Yeah. Well, like we talked about, not making the exercise, not making the client fit the exercise, but the exercise fitting the client.
Yeah. We need to allow the person to move.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the anatomy cues in a normal Pilates session, not like a rehab or PT session, inhibit that movement. It stops it a lot.
Yeah.
I know for me it does, and you can see it. I think, and it was the same with the clients when the student teachers were in that first session, and they're like, well, how do you make sure someone's, like, straight? How do you make sure, and they've been told about their rib cage and, like, close it up and make sure your hips and pelvis this and do this and do that. And when I showed him just ask the person, oh, can you move this here? Can you, take your, hips and whatever it was. I don't remember. But there was no anatomy in it. But they watched this person's body change by just active cues and not being told, oh, your ribs are way out here. Can you close them up? And then that causes something else to happen. Then you got to fix that. And then that causes, it's like this chain of, like, gripping.
It's all connected. And just hearing you say, like, oh, well, your ribs are open. Like, it sounds like something's wrong.
It sounds bad, right?
You. Yeah. And
you and I both are rib poppers, which a lot of people
are. And I know I am. And I've always, like, felt like wrong about, like, my flared ribs or my anterior pelvic sway, and so it's like, if you're gonna be correcting that, like, I don't want to dump into my low back. I don't want to pop through my rib cage, but can we cue it in a way that helps the person find their placement for themselves and feel good about it?
Yeah. And if you find it for yourself, like we've seen with our clients, and I'm thinking of, like, my little dancer girl when she found hers, in the outside world, when they're standing in line or something and things are not feeling great in their back or whatever it is, they go, oh, let me find that place when I was in Pilates standing. And they can figure it out for themselves.
Yeah.
And also, it's like our vision of what is that perfect alignment is never going to be there for a person.
Yeah, there's no perfect.
No. It's where's the best place they can get and have the most support. And it does change. Dynamic stability.
Yeah.
It's always changing. But I mean, I think one exercise people can do is see if they can teach a whole day without using anatomy.
Yeah. I mean, hey, it's the same thing like during COVID when it's like, oh, can you teach without having hands-on placement?
And I think that's the other thing too is if these, and we each, we had a lot of friends, and you and I are not touchy pushy-pulley of our clients. And we do mat. Mm-hmm. And so for us, it was like our clients were like, whatever. And they hit the mat and it was fine. But a lot used anatomy so their clients could connect. They were putting them in positions before they moved.
Yeah.
And they struggled. And it was really hard.
Yeah, because if you're relying on the hands-on cues when you can't touch the person and like physically place them where you want them to start from, then
the client has no clue.
Because they can't find it for themselves.
Exactly.
So if you're separated by that screen and now you're trying to explain to them how to find this placement.
That's a lot of talking.
Yeah.
It's a lot of, and that's the other thing is like giving that client that autonomy, which we talked about, is less talking for the teacher, is less energy so that you can be in it more.
Yeah.
And allow their brain to kind of open up a little bit too.
Yeah, so everybody feels more centered and grounded from the session. And it's just, like, why do we have to make it so complicated? And so, I forget if we said this at the beginning, but if you're just doing a simple bicep curl.
We did not say it at the beginning.
We said it to ourselves.
Yeah, we said it to ourselves earlier.
If you're doing, let's say, like in personal training, when you're doing a workout.
You're in the weight room.
You're picking up a weight. And so if you're doing a bicep curl, the trainer's not saying from your biceps, like
curl
the weight lift from your bicep.
From your bicep.
And like the bicep is working. But okay, let's lift the weight.
Lift the weight. Curl it to your shoulder.
Pick up the weight. Curl the weight to your shoulder. Okay. The bicep is working. And then if you see something funky, if the shoulder's popping to the ear or dumping forward, then you can layer in and cue and adjust what the person's doing. But super simple.
But we were thinking about a lot when it came to weight training. I really can't remember when I did personal trainers, that sounds really bad. When I had personal trainers, they really didn't talk anatomy a lot.
No.
Not kind of move from this.
You're getting movement, you're being assisted into the position.
Maybe it's changed to be this.
Yeah, I
don't know. Maybe it's not the same anymore.
It can be things can just be simpler. Like we don't have to be so complicated. We can let people move. We can find the movement with these action cues.
They're going to have more fun and enjoyment, and they're going to continue to come longer and go on that journey and figure things out. And it will get deep for them in terms of what they can do, but in a very positive way from the beginning.
Yeah.
But I do think if you guys do it, we would love to hear from you. If you do use a lot of anatomy, just try for a day to not and see how that goes.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear.
Yeah, and I will say that I come from a kinesiology and dance background, so I do use anatomy, but in specific instances and specific cases.
Yep, same.
And so it's not that that's wrong.
No, we're not bashing that.
But you need it to be applicable for the person and an action base, so
and something they understand.
Yeah,
that they can connect with, and not just you saying your anatomy.
Yeah,
so you can say it.
Yeah. So if someone says move from your transverse abdominis, that doesn't really make sense because there's so many other
many layers on top of all of that kind of situation.
And the thing you had said about that student where she was in a class and she was a dancer and knew stuff, and so the teacher said,
squeeze your glutes.
Squeeze your glutes. And in her mind, she says, well, which one?
Yeah, because she knew it wasn't just one muscle. She knew that it was,
the different gluteus
minimum. Yeah, minimum. She's like, and I said, oh, I so wish you had said something to the teacher.
Wait, which glute? Which one? No. Which one should I do this movement from?
Most people don't know that. But yeah, she knew that as a dancer. Yeah.
Which is something that kind of hits it home where it makes you think like,
oh yeah, that is right. Hamstrings and not just one muscle. Quads, not just one muscle. Yeah. But yay, we want to hear from you, so let us know. That was
cute.
Yeah, we were worried about this one. Our notes were all over the map on this one.
We have a lot to talk about.
We have a lot,
We'll do some follow-ups.
We'll do more. But on that note, it is April, our birthday month. Next month is our spring workshop.
Yep.
May 17th here in LA. It's 4 CECs, guiding your clients in pain. which kind of goes with this in terms of, those that are coming to you or have been in pain or whatever's kind of going on, and how to move them through the session safely, and giving you more confidence.
Yes.
As a teacher.
Yay!
Yay! And you can find it on our website.
Yeah, it's on our website. You can always DM us on Instagram.
Yep.
Or email.
Yep. And follow us on Instagram. We're on all the places for podcasts. What else are we on? Facebook.
All the socials.
All the socials. Yeah, all the socials. But thanks for listening, and happy birthday to Davina!
Yay!